Good afternoon, everybody. To those who have joined us so far, welcome to the session for the Lunch and Learn. We'll just give it a few minutes just to let others join, and then we will make a start. So welcome to those who have just joined us. We'll just give it a minute or two just to let everyone else who wants to join come into the session, and then we will make a start. So welcome to those who have just joined. We're just going to give it another minute and just to let any latecomers join, and then we will make a start. Just give it a few more seconds and then we will delve into the session. Lovely. Okay, so let's make a start. So welcome everybody to our Lunch and Learn webinar series. This is where we tell you about what's going on here at Compleat and how to get the most out of your iCompleat subscription. So today's session, we're going to be covering workflows, and we're going to be looking at some scenarios and run through the basics, as well as enhanced functionality that has recently come out and you will hopefully find of benefit. Today, I'm excited to introduce Lyrico as our Lunch and Learn sponsor. Lyrico is the European leader and the third largest distributor of workplace products and services in the world. They are dedicated to helping their clients find sustainable solutions that enhance safety, well-being, and productivity. We'll talk a little bit more about the ecosystem where you can find a link to them as we go through this session. So today's agenda, we are going to be looking at what are workflows in iCompleat, the benefits of the workflows. We'll go through a live demo just where I show you some tips and tricks and how us as consultants would attack or approach rather workflows. Attack sounds a little bit severe, doesn't it? We would approach workflows. We'll then talk about the Compleat ecosystem, and then there'll be an opportunity for any questions at the end. This is me. My name's Darren. I am a software implementation consultant here at Compleat. I've been here for over 6.5 years now. So hopefully I'll be able to take you through a well-rounded session this afternoon. Just some housekeeping. If we could just ensure all microphones are off, obviously except for mine, just so we don't have any interruptions. Obviously this session is being recorded. And we'll share a link of that recording afterwards. As we're going through, if you do have any questions, hope you do, but if you just pop them in the Q&A box that you should find on your screen in the Teams meeting, and we'll go through those at the end. So let's have a look at workflows. So I've got here my iCompleat instance that I will bring up to the top. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to show obviously some invoices that we've got here, just a couple of invoices in different companies that have workflows configured in different ways. So first thing to point out is that if you are a multi-company site, obviously you'll be having configuration per company, and you can have workflows in one and separate workflows in another, and they can work differently and do different things. I'm just going to call up this invoice here first, which is for my demo site for consultants 2. So we've got a standard invoice, and it's down here that I just wanted to draw your attention. If I click on this, this is the submit button where we would be submitting a transaction to a workflow. You can see here that I've got many workflows, all going to different people based on different situations. So this is one way that you can have your workflows configured. There's nothing wrong with it. However, if you imagine that there are loads and loads of different departments, you can see here we've got IT and marketing and maths and reception, transport, etc. You could end up with quite a long list that the user's having to choose from. What might work better for you, depending on obviously certain criteria that we'll be going through during this session, what might work better is if we had a restricted list and had the workflows working more dynamically, so that we just have, for example, 3 options. And we'll be talking about what each of these options are and how we achieve this kind of setup, as opposed to having a long list of workflows to choose from. It's very much, do we have one button to control it all, or do we give individual buttons? Just before we go into the demo, the actual configuration side, we're in the demo. Before we go into the configuration side, whilst we're in the invoice screen, if I go to edit and if I call up the supplier defaults, one of the really good areas that could help you is this ability to set a workflow default. This is kind of one of the key areas that would come into play if you're looking to achieve automation within the system. Obviously, supplier defaults, you can default what certain fields should be when an invoice comes into the system, and the system will use these if it's not matching to an invoice, to an order, and inheriting that coding from the order. But if we were to preset a workflow, assuming that the invoice comes in and it has been mapped, so the supplier's been mapped, the system has managed to determine all of the coding, whether it's through supplier defaults or through order matching. As long as it's also been given a workflow, then the system can automatically process that and automatically submit it. AP operators won't see it in the unprocessed tray. It just deals with it and sends it out for approval, whatever that approval should be. And obviously that's what we are talking about today. But I just wanted to point that out, that it's one of the key areas that we've seen some customers do omit. Remembering here that if you do choose a specific workflow, so let's say, for example, we choose our post-order match workflow where the values from the order match the invoice, or it's a part match, the system is only going to submit it to that if it's got all the coding and everything is adding up and everything makes sense. So don't be afraid to set a workflow. It's not just going to say, oh, there's my workflow, I'm submitting to it regardless. It will only submit to it if all the planets align, as it were. So that's on the supplier defaults. The other thing I can show you from here as well is if I move to an invoice that has been submitted, is the approval timeline. So from the documents and timeline button, so that documents and timeline button will appear for any invoices that have been submitted or are in the awaiting approval tray. You can see here this approval timeline. It will show you, or although it's now been updated to show you, who it is currently sitting with for approval. And for those customers who have been with us for quite a while, you'll probably be familiar with it. Used to show you all of the potential steps that it would go to. That's now been hidden behind this section here. So if you wanted to see all the potential areas where it could go, remembering it's not necessarily where it will go to, it's just potentially where it could go to, you can just click on that view button and those will appear. Otherwise, it will just show you who it's going to go to next. So that's a new piece of functionality that's been brought in there. So let me come out of the invoice and let's go and have a look at where the configuration is made for the workflows. So I'm just waiting for my screen to wake up and take me back to my home page where I can then go to configuration and into workflows. So what we have or will have on this screen is a list of all of our workflows. So this is the demo site for consultants 2, and you can see we've got quite a lot of workflows in there. What I'm going to do is just flick over to my demo consultants 1, back to configuration, back to workflows, and these are the workflows I have for this particular company. So just to talk about this screen and what we are seeing here. So I'm just going to order by transaction type. So I've got a grid here showing my individual workflows. It's showing abbreviated name, which is the name that will appear on the button, and then orders, which is the name of the workflow itself. We then have a transaction type over on this right-hand side here. So this is telling me that I'll have a button called submit. It's going to be for orders, and it will only appear in the orders module. These next 3, you can see we've got buttons that will show direct IMV, PO match, and variance. These are the titles, and hovering over that button will show you these titles. So it's sometimes a good idea just to name the workflows, just give it a little bit more of a description so the users can hover over and see that description pop up. But you can see that these are for invoices and credit notes only. So the obvious difference is that these workflows will not show in the orders module, and likewise this one will not show for invoices and credit notes. This one down here has been set for all transaction types, and so that ordinarily would be made available to both invoices and orders. Now if we want to change where a workflow is visible, if I just come into my orders workflow, you'll see that we have the transaction type set here. So we can just choose where a workflow is visible. And we do find on some customer sites that this is an area that perhaps there was misunderstanding over what this is for, or it's been inadvertently set incorrectly. But this can help just tidy the system up just by sorting it into where the workflow should show. Now looking at what we've got on the screen here, remembering this is my orders or my requisitions workflow, we've got the name, the abbreviated name. The abbreviated name, as I said, is what's going to show on the button, and we are limited to the number of characters that are applicable or available to use in there. So do bear that in mind, and this is where the name comes in helpful. If it's orders, we have the option for restricting it to who the workflow is visible to, and this will be all users within the system. I've only got a small system here, but all users within the system, and we can choose and select, deselect who it's visible to. So that comes in particularly handy if certain users aren't supposed to use particular workflows. We have a toggle switch here for active or switching it off to deactivate it. So if there was a workflow that we no longer wanted to have in play, we could just deactivate it. That's particularly handy as well if you're looking to make changes to a workflow. Jumping ahead slightly, down here on the actions button, we have a duplicate function. So you can duplicate a workflow, and it's always a good idea if you're going to be making any changes, make a duplicate of it. So you copy it, make the copy inactive, and save that down so you've got a copy of it should anything go horribly wrong with the new one, and then make the changes in the new one. We've got a section here for automatic approval, or rather allow automatic approval. And what that does is if the workflow can't find a home to go to, then it will approve. What we are doing in the workflow is we are trying to make sure that we are capturing the transaction at certain points that we need to. So whether that be because of a certain account code, a certain supplier, department code, what have you. We'll go through some of the options in a moment, but we're looking to catch that invoice so that somebody can approve it. If it can't find a home to go to, as I said, through this workflow, then it could just approve. And you may want that in some circumstances, but then again you may not. So if you don't want it to automatically approve, you can deactivate that, and that's when this nominated workflow section will appear. And what this is asking for is, okay, if I can't find a home to go to in this workflow, I won't just approve it, but what workflow do you want me to use next? And typically, for those who have it already set up, you may see it in your system as a catch-all or a workflow not found or workflow error, something like that, where the workflow is a very simple, just go to this one or two people because there's a problem. Don't just approve it, go to a fallback position if you like. So that's what that nominated workflow is, and I'll show you the catch-all workflow in a bit. Just whilst we're in this screen though, we've got obviously our workflow itself. So the workflows work on a concept of positions and then nodes within the position. So I've got position 1 with 2 nodes and then position 2 with a further node. If a transaction is submitted to the workflow, it will come in at the top. It will look for a home to go to. If it finds, it will contact, wait until they've approved. Once they've approved, it will then move on. If it can't find anything, again, it will just move on. And you can see here we've got another step. It would sit and wait. Once this person's approved, it would then move on. And because it's got nowhere else to go to, it's at that point that it's approved. Requisition will become an order, or the invoice is posted out to the finance platform. We've got a myriad of options available to us within these nodes and these positions. If I click into Abigail's node, you can see that initially we're presented with this screen here. We can delete the node or remove it. We can give it a name. If we don't populate a name in here, then it will default to the name of the users who have been selected. There is a change here. So we have the concept of group type. And what we can do is have a user where we are then choosing a user, bearing in mind that in order for the user to appear here, they have to have been marked as an approver against their user record. The other group type we have is order creator. And what that will do is remove the ability to choose an individual, because the system is going to go and look, in the case of an invoice match to an order, the system is just going to go and look for whoever created that order and seek approval from them. And obviously we'll go through the whys and wherefores of that when we look at the invoice workflow. So this is just kind of, if you like, header information about the node. If I click on this configure criteria button, we've got these options here. So we can configure it to be if the net value is at least, and then we could put a value in there. What we consultants will try and do is, if we're looking at multi-value workflows, so for example, anything over 0 would go to Abigail, but then if it's over £500, it would go to Simon, and if it's over £10,000, it would go to the finance director. What we'd be looking to do is group, or rather set the workflow up in such a way that anything over 0 is position 1, anything over 500 is position 2, anything over 10,000 is position 3. So at least it kind of gives it a nice clear definition of how it's going to work, and it will just work its way up through those values, and it keeps it for admin purposes, keeps it nice and clean. Just coming back to our criteria, we've got if all of, but we could have if any of, and then we can add our criteria in like so. So I've got if the line account code is in a range of one of these 3 account codes, and so the transaction will start position 1. It will look at this node. Is the account code one of these? Yes, it is. I stop here, wait for Abigail to either approve or deny. We can add further criteria to this. So if I click onto here, we can see we've got header information, and as I scroll down through there, it will change to line information. And this is one of the key areas that if you're building particularly large workflows and get wrong, you'll only get it wrong the once. It ties back to the layouts. You do need to be very specific with this and make sure you're choosing the right location. So if on your layout we have the supplier at header level and we have department code at line level, or in this instance, let's say area, we have area at line level on our layout. We need to make sure that we are choosing area from line level on our workflow, because if I choose area from header, the system is going to look at the transaction and say, well, there is no area on the header, so I don't need to contact this node, I'm going to move on. So you do need to be very specific and make sure you're capturing the data fields from the right locations. If I was to, let's say, set this to supplier, I have options here. For example, equal to, not equal to, is in a range, not in a range, blank, not blank. If I choose in a range, then what that will allow me to do is to go through and choose my suppliers. But a new piece of functionality that has come in is this keyboard function here, which if I open this up, what this is allowing me to do is to simply copy and paste all of my codes like so. So instead of having to go through an exhaustive list and choose this one and then this one and then that one and that, I can just get all the codes, copy and paste, and then submit. It will also do a validation check as well to make sure that all the codes exist. We can see 81017 is not in there correctly, so we can remove that, submit, and that's going to bring all of our suppliers straight away through for us. So obviously in this situation we haven't got that many suppliers, but if you've got hundreds of account codes, what have you, then obviously that's going to be an invaluable tool for you. Just a note on the data that I've actually selected from here. So I've chosen supplier, and this is one of the things that through a new design we would as consultants be questioning the practicality of using supplier. If you're regularly bringing in new suppliers, you've got to remember to keep coming and adding them to your workflows. So if there is something else that can be used to drive the workflows forward, then so much the better. You could look to perhaps have them driven by the coding, so or different coding, so things like area perhaps, or department, or cost center code. And don't forget, as we covered off in a previous Lunch and Learn session, we were looking at custom fields. You can create your own custom field within the system, and then you can include that. And in fact, area is a custom field within my iCompleat build that I can then call up and introduce here to say if the area is equal to north, that sort of thing. So loads of options around there. But as you can imagine, if you've got quite a broad range of account codes and different people looking after them, so we can see Abigail is advertising, stationery and IT, and if I go to Simon, he is not in a range of advertising, stationery and IT, so he's doing everything else bar those three. If you are getting quite specific with the configuration, obviously we need to make sure that we do have a fail safe so that should something fall through the net, we can then capture it. And again, that's with our switching off of automatic approval and setting a nominated workflow. But we'll look at that in a bit. So the way I've got this workflow set up, very nice and simple. Abigail, if it is one of these account codes, Simon, if it is not these account codes, they will approve, and afterwards it will move on to Abigail if it is over £1,000. So in this event, Abigail would approve twice. She's doing it once from an accounts perspective, account code perspective, and then again from a value perspective. Some of the other options we have, we could add in another group here. And if we say the user is, let's do Simon again, And let's tell the system that we want Simon to approve if the, let's find our area from the line level is equal to east. So just Simon is going to approve. I can add Abigail in there as well. So Abigail and Simon can approve if it's east, but because of the way it's set up, it's an either Simon or Abigail. It will go out to both. The system will send the transaction to both of them, but only one of them need approve. If I need both of them to approve, if it's east, then what I'd be looking to do is have Simon in one node and then add Abigail into the other one. And what this will do is it will send it out to both of them, and both of them will have to have approved it before it will then move on to position 2. So again, you've got the ability to kind of do that. And now, as you can see, this is kind of getting a little bit complicated. So what we could do is we could add in here and say, if I could spell it correctly, Abigail account approval, and then maybe over here have Abigail area approval, that sort of thing. You'll notice that it's not actually updating them. What I need to do is click on save down at the bottom, and then if I go back in, you can see it's then updated it like so. And these are the names that would then appear in the timeline, but that we will see through the documents and timeline button within the transactions themselves. So let's have a look at some of the other workflows, because basically what we are looking to do with the workflows is obviously cut down on as much work as possible. So we've looked at the orders workflow, and that's for requisition being created. The other side is obviously the invoices or credit notes workflow. And one of the things that, again, we try and do on a new configuration and encourage you customers to do is to kind of think about the sort of approval that a transaction would need to go through. If I just call up this very rough diagram that I have put together, if we are looking at the order goes off for approval, gets approved, and it's at that point that the business has committed to spend that money. So when the invoice comes in, do we need to send that invoice all the way through everybody again because they've already approved it at an order stage? And so one of the things that you could consider is when the invoice comes in and it's matching to that order, if the values match, yes, then perhaps consider, instead of sending it out to everybody, maybe send it to the order creator. And you're sending it out to them not from a payment approval point of view, but more of a receipting. The invoices come in for that order that you made. Did you receive those pens? Did the plumber come and fix the toilet? Have you got the goods in the warehouse? And their approval of that is if you like, a pseudo receipting. And once they've approved, you can then go out to the finance platform. You could, if you wanted to, add another step perhaps between there, which is a final finance check, which some customers like to do, where the AP team will just eyeball the invoice just to make sure everything's correct before it goes out and gets posted. But obviously that's if the values match. If the values don't match, then the route could look slightly different. So again, we could get that approval from the person who created the order. Have you received the goods? Because if they haven't received the goods yet, there's no point in even sometimes entertaining processing that invoice just yet. But assuming they have received and they've approved it, you can then have the system go off and seek further approval for that over expenditure. And what a lot of customers like to do is basically have a route here, which is just repeating the orders route. And so they'd build in, or we'd build in to say, fine, so whatever the original order went through, first of all, go to the person who created the order, then repeat that order so that everybody involved can see and approve this over expenditure. And then again, once they've finally approved, that would go out to the finance platform. And that's kind of what we are seeing here in this PO match and order variance. So I've got a workflow built here which is telling me, or rather telling the system, go to the order creator, remembering I've chosen the group order creator. If I look at the configure criteria, it's got all of the order matching statuses here, and we can, if we want to, get very clever, and we could just tell the system only go to the order creator if it is matched or a part match, because it might be that we're waiting for another invoice to come in. So we can toy with the statuses, and then once the order creator has approved it, I've got a final finance check here, so it's just going to member of the finance team, no criteria because we want everything to go there. And once finance have checked all coding is correct, it can then go out. It may be that you don't want the final finance check and we can just delete that node. You could have it, for example, that perhaps you want finance to check it first for whatever reason. And in that case, what we could do, build the node, and I can drag and drop that up like so. And it would do our finance check first, and then go to the order creator. But you'd probably want it that way around. But just to demonstrate, you can drag and drop those. So that was our match. If I have a look at my order variance, so the invoice exceeds the order, you can see that it's still going to the order creator, but then it's just repeating that original order workflow that I had. And all I did to create this was I took the original orders workflow before I messed it up, but I took the original orders workflow and I just created a duplicate of that and copied it. That then produced a copy of, and away I go. The other key area, if you like, so imagine we've got orders where the invoice is matching the order, where the invoice is more than the order. The other area is direct invoices. So that's where there is no PO. So that's another one of those core areas. And we can see here that it is for invoices where there's no purchase order. I'm simply just going to one user, but again, you can build in as many different users and nodes as you need to. And lastly, running alongside all of these, I'll just get rid of my copy of orders, just tidy my list up. In some of them, I've told the system to not allow the automatic approval, just go to the catch all. And if I have a look at my catch all, it's a very simple, just go to Simon. And because it is my nominated workflow, you can see up here, this is a nominated workflow. I have the ability to hide for workflow selection. So this isn't a workflow that is visible to the users where they can choose it when they're in either orders or invoices. It's hidden in the background and it's just a fallback one. And so if Simon gets anything for approval, he'll be able to look at the documents and timeline, see that the catch all workflow was used. That's his cue to then look into why. It might be if he's got edit permissions, he can then edit the coding, deny it, and then resubmit it and have it go to the correct person and have them approve on its correct journey. The other new piece of functionality in here is allow self-approval. And what this does, if I just hover over here, so automatically self-approve if the approver who created the order or submitted the invoice for approval. So that's a nice kind of little fast track. If I created the order, I can then have it so that I don't have to actually approve it because I'm the one that created the order. Now, where that can particularly come in handy is if you've got kind of senior management teams, FDs, etc. You could have it so that they have their own workflow for orders. So let's say it's just Simon who has this particular workflow, and we can switch on allow self-approval so that if Simon uses it, obviously all of this would be gone, but if Simon uses it, then it just automatically approves. And one of the things we're looking to do is to enhance around this functionality as well to help the workflows get more dynamic as they go along. So last thing I can show you here, just checking I've gone through everything. Yeah, I've gone through the copying of the workflows. That's one of the key things to do, but to help you with maintaining the workflows, let's just find my orders one that's got a few nodes. We have this under the actions, we have an export function. And what the export will do is take the workflow and put it into an Excel spreadsheet, whereby it will have the workflow split out into a series of tabs. So we'll have one tab which will contain the header information. I'll carry on describing it. Oh, there we go. We'll have one tab holding the header information, like so. So you can see workflow details, so the name of the workflow, etc., who the users are. And then I have another tab down at the bottom for my position 1. So we can see Abigail if the account code is in a range of one of these, and Abigail if the area is equal to East, Simon, etc. And then my position 2, where you can see it will go to Abigail again if it's over £1,000, regardless of any criteria on the invoice. So this export function is a very handy tool, especially when it comes to big workflows. And again, it just helps to keep a track of what they currently are. And it's not a bad idea to regularly just go in, create an export, file the Excel spreadsheet somewhere, and then if for some reason somebody says, hang on, this used to go to here, but it's not, then you've got a backup of how it used to look, and obviously put it back to how it should be. So I hope you all found that of use. I'll just move back to my slides. So just before we jump into any questions, just wanted to quickly mention the Compleat ecosystem. Hopefully you've seen the banner sitting at the top of your screens, our ecosystem here. And it's our built-in supplier network that connects businesses with trusted providers across a huge range of industries. So whether you're looking for office supplies, financial solutions, or specialist services, the ecosystem makes it a seamless function to find, connect with, and buy from the best suppliers without the usual hassle. And you'll see just here a small selection of the suppliers who have available through our platform, and obviously there's our kind sponsors for today, Lyrico. So I am happy to open up the forum now. If you have any questions at all on any of that, let me just find my Q&A field. Just let that load up and see if we got any questions. Okay, so so I've got one here from my view, finance admin. Under the documents and timeline, what's the difference between these two rows? Name A and 2 others next approver. Right. Okay, so I think with this one, what you're seeing is if I come into here and into here and go to documents and timeline, so you're seeing name A and 2 others. So that is purely because of the length of text that we have available to show in this node. I know it's quite a wide node here, but if you imagine the screen is a lot, if somebody has the screen a lot smaller, or if they're using a mobile device, it's basically telling you that in this particular node you have, if I just go back to my configuration, and in fact the example I gave on the orders one for Abigail and Simon would be a good example. So is because the node's probably saying something like this, and it's showing the name, and so you'd see Simon, Langham, and one other. To get around this, what you could do is use this name field up here, maybe Simon and Abigail, for example. And so in your documents and timeline, you would see Simon and Abigail. So I have another question here. How many nodes can you have in a workflow? That's a very good question. You're welcome. That's a very good question. So I would like to say unlimited, but don't go nuts. The reason I say that is because obviously you've got to maintain it. We have had some particularly large workflows, kind of 100, 150 plus nodes in one position, and the system handles it. The only downside is that obviously somebody's going to have to maintain that going forward. So you can have quite a few nodes and quite a few positions in there, but do bear in mind the more complex it is, the harder it's going to be to maintain. One of the key things we always say is keep it simple where possible. Another question I got is, can I redirect to someone else midway through the workflow? Now that's again a good question. That's unfortunately not something that's possible to do, because the system is going to look at the workflow and that's what it's going to be running to. So if you do find that you need to redirect it to somebody else, you've got one of two options. You could either recall the transaction, amend the workflow, resubmit it, or what you could look to do is use the nominee function. So for every user who is an approver in the system, there's this nominee function whereby you can go into the user record and set a nominee. The users themselves can do this as well. And by setting a nominee, what you're basically doing is saying everything that comes to me for approval, also send it out to Simon. What that will do is that will leave it in my awaiting approval tray, but share that with Simon as well. Now that function is predominantly used for things like annual leave, absence, that sort of thing, keep the wheels turning, but you could in that instance use it for that as well. Another question I've got is, can I set it so that a line value under £100 is also approved, but any lines over have to go for approval? Yes. So one of the ways you could look to do that is, let's say, do orders. You could look to tell the system in the criteria. If we go down to lines, we have in here base net value. So it's base net value of the line. And then we could say is greater than 100. And so it would only go to Abigail if the base net was greater than 100. So yeah, that's how you do that. What you would need to bear in mind with that though is up here with our allow automatic approval, we'd have to have that switched on, because effectively what we'd be doing is we're telling the system if it's one of these codes and if it's greater than 100, then go to Abigail. But we need to be mindful of what if it's one of these count codes and not over 100. If we have this set, then effectively we're telling the system you haven't got a home to go to, so it's going to fall out and go to our catch-all workflow, whereas we'd have to, for this one, switch automatic approval on, which in turn is going to mean that we have to be incredibly careful to make sure we are capturing all other scenarios that could go through the system. Lovely. So I will just refresh the screen. Where are we? So if I want to set up a workflow for one specific vendor, could you go over? So yes, what if you wanted a workflow for one specific vendor, then what I'll be looking to do is, let's say Lyrico. call it Lyrico. Let's say it's for orders. It's active. We're going to allow, in fact, yeah, well, I won't allow automatic. And then what I could do here is I can tell the system, go to Abigail if the supplier is equal to Lyrico, like so. Obviously, because it's orders, show it who it's visible to. So what that will do is if this particular workflow is used, then it will come to node 1 and position 1. It will look to see if the supply is equal to Lyrico. Fantastic, it goes to Abigail. If it's not equal to Lyrico, then it's going to error out and fall into our catch-all. And we know from having looked at it earlier, Simon is the lucky recipient of the catch-all. You could just have put Lyrico in the name and then left the criteria blank. However, that means that if the button's used in error, then everything is going to go to. So it could be that you've used a Lyrico workflow. However, somebody submitted a screw fix order to it. So by putting that criteria in, that's kind of acting as our fail-safe, if you like. Like so. Just have a look, just conscious of time, and obviously you probably want to continue with your lunch, so we'll just go through another couple of questions. If I delete a workflow, would it still show on approved invoices? That's a good question. So we can't delete a workflow primarily for that exact reason. So you can deactivate a workflow, and that will ensure that historical records will all stay the same. It will all keep the name of the workflow that was used. It just won't show available to users. If you wanted to bring back any inactive workflows, then you have this toggle switch here, toggle there, and you can see that there's an active, inactive. And if you wanted to bring it back into play, you can select it and then activate like so. Fantastic. So I'll just do one more. I have some purchase order workflows that we have decided not to use. Go over how I can make them inactive. Kind of done that one. Just that inactive, deactive, inactive button there. Let's see if we can get another one. Is there a way to create a template email users to chase approval of invoices? I know the system sends one automatically after 30 days. I mean, additional email. Okay, so yes, the notifications side of that, then the options that we currently have. So we have these approver nudges, and then down here we've got transaction requires approval from a workflow. So this is going to be your initial, I've submitted it, I'm notifying Simon that something's with him for approval. The nudges up here, yeah, you are, so up here we've got nudge them after 24 hours, nudge them after 48 hours, and that's just a simple toggle. And then you can re-notify every other certain number of days. If you're looking at the 72 hours, then you have the option, the additional option to notify another user after 72 hours. And that's typically someone in the finance team, because it might be that a transaction's with the user, it's been with them for over 72 hours, it's not moving, it's holding the system up. It might be because they're on holiday, nobody knows about it, and by notifying somebody in the finance team, then it draws their attention to it, and they can go to the submitted tray and have a look and see if they need to go in as an admin user, make a nominee to allow the nominee to process it, so on and so forth. But I hope that answers your question. So thank you ever so much for the questions. Apologies if I didn't get around to all of them. If there is anything burning that you'd like help on, then obviously please feel free to reach out to support. They'll be more than happy to help. But no, thank you for submitting those. So just to finish off then, as I said, if you do have anything further, we'd like any further help with anything, obviously there's support, or there is our success team. Email address success@completesoftware.com. Obviously connect to us through LinkedIn. We'll be sending a short survey out as well. Please do complete that. It's really handy just to see if these sessions are beneficial, and also what you'd like us to cover in future sessions as well. We very much want this to be for you going forward, so if there's something specific you'd like to see, then please do let us know. And on that point, the next Lunch and Learn is scheduled in for the 16th of September. Again, that'll be with myself, and we are going to be looking at the behavior settings within the system. So not as much content, unfortunately, as today's one, but still very useful with a lot of the tools that we have around there. And we'll be covering those off. So I look forward to welcoming you onto that one. Just leaves me to say thank you ever so much for attending this session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Many thanks, everyone. Bye.